Now our tax discussion here. Tax day has come and gone. Many people avoided the deadline. They just didn't file because they owe money. They don't know what to do. Some people just want to make it go away. They hide their head in the sand. You know, we have people who can help today from 2020 Tax Resolution. Jason Peckham, and Jennifer Halverson. They're both attorneys with 2020 Tax Resolution. And Jason is here along with Jennifer to discuss something that people hear about on TV all the time, pay pennies on the dollar. Now, most of the time that's a lot of bull, but there is something called an offer in compromise.
Correct.
What is that?
Well, the program with the offer in compromise with the Internal Revenue Service, it's a way to settle the liability with the Internal Revenue Service for less than what's owed.
Now, people don't think that's possible because we're always told, you know, death and taxes, you don't get away.
If it's too good to be true, it probably is, something along those lines.
So I want to talk about offer in compromise, settling for less. But first I want to remind people that while we're talking and for the hour, you can call our help center where 2020 tax resolution experts are there. 303-771-HELP, 303-771-4357. Go ahead. Offer in compromise.
So I guess the first thing I would say is that the discussion, the commercials on TV about pennies on the dollar, those commercials, that kind of discussion is completely deceptive and misleading because it gives the false impression that you can settle with the Internal Revenue Service, just kind of throw a dollar figure at them, and then they come back in and say, it's accepted. They're like there's a magic wand or something. That's not how it works at all. It's always based upon ability to pay. So if you have the ability to pay a lot, you're going to pay a lot. If you have the ability to pay just a little bit, you're going to pay a little bit.
And how do they determine that? How do they determine that, Jennifer, on what you can pay?
There is a formula that they use, and what they consider are your equity and assets as well as your disposable income.
So equity and assets, what would that be?
Well, if you have, say, own the building that you work out of or own your house, say,
okay.
And it's worth $100,000 and you have paid off all but $30,000, you would technically then have $70,000.
Would they expect you to borrow against that maybe?
They would want you to try to at least.
Okay.
You may get turned down for various reasons, but they would at least like to see that you've tried to do so. Generally speaking, through a few different lenders. Mm-hmm. And if you're unable to do so and you provide that documentation, then that's something that could be worked with.
Okay.
But they don't want you to just say, I don't want to borrow, move on.
What's considered disposable income?
The disposable income is figured, it's basically your income minus your allowable expenses. And the IRS has set up national standards that dictates what your allowable expenses are. And it varies depending on the region that you're in the country.
So just because you go get a manicure once a week doesn't mean that you don't have money to pay, because that may not be allowed.
Well, and what they're generally looking at, the bigger categories of housing, utilities,
right,
transportation, and depending on how many people you have in your household and or the part of the country you're in, they'll allow you X amount as an allowable expense.
Okay. So who can file this? Can anyone file it, or is it only for low-income people?
No, anyone can file. Theoretically, the program's available to businesses and individuals. However, practically speaking, businesses, to file an offer in compromise if you're a business is probably a waste of time.
Why is that?
Well, because there's two reasons. One, the minimum offer for a business is the original liability, and so it becomes difficult, if not impossible, for a business owner to actually come up with that lump sum payment.
Okay.
Number two, there's a policy within the Internal Revenue Service that states that we don't want to give, we the IRS, don't want to give an unfair competitive advantage to another business. So what they don't want to do is say, we're going to make this business over here pay all their taxes, and this business over here only pays 10, 20%. They don't want to make that.
So with a business,
distinction.
If you make an offer, the offer is usually the original obligation.
Correct.
Minus penalties and interest. Is that what it is?
Yeah, typically, if theoretically, if you could actually get the offer in compromise to go through the entire process and get that figure, you might get rid of a little bit of penalties.
But that's a waste of time, you think, for businesses.
Absolutely. It's more of a boondoggle than
because
anything else.
A lot of business people get suckered into paying money up front to these services thinking they're going to get out of their tax.
Right. And it's an installment agreement, a reasonable repayment arrangement, maybe restructuring the business, that's a much better option for businesses.
Okay, so Jennifer, on the payment, if they do agree to a lump sum, do they have to come up with that lump sum?
Well, they have to come up with a 20% down payment. There's also a $150 fee that's charged for all offers to process them. And then depending on how long you're paying it for, you may or may not have to start making payments, the payments that you're proposing. So there is a financial obligation right off the bat.
So if you made a $20,000 compromise, you have to come up with $4,000. Is that what?
Just
is that
to
what we
even
just
submit
said?
the offer.
To submit it.
To submit it.
Right.
Plus-
That's not even acceptance. That's just if you submit the offer, you have to come up, if you submit a $20,000 offer, you have to come up with $4,000 down, and that's not refundable.
Plus the $150.
Right, plus the $150 filing fee.
So if they don't accept it, you've given up that $4,000.
Now, that'll go towards your tax
Right, of
liability,
course.
but you're not going to get that back.
Okay. Well, is the IRS kinder and gentler with this economy right now? What are you finding?
Actually, the statistics, the National Taxpayer Advocate came out with a report in January with all the 2009 statistics. In 2009, 10,600, give or take, offers were accepted. That's 24% of the total number. There's 2 million taxpayers that owe money to the Internal Revenue Service that the IRS is actively collecting on. $10,000 10,000 offers were accepted. That's a very, very small figure.
Now why is that? Is that because people aren't applying, or is that because most people are getting rejected?
Well, it's because most people are getting rejected. There's 100 steps in that process for the entire offer and compromise. It makes it very, very difficult for anybody to go through all 100 steps and get it taken care of properly.
What is your percentage, do you know, of getting things accepted?
We don't really keep those kinds of figures, but I would tend to think that it's higher than the national average.
Yeah, because now there are many, many other options in addition to offer and compromise, right?
Correct.
Installment agreements.
Right.
Absolutely.
And then disputing liability sometimes if they get it wrong. Don't they get it wrong sometimes?
On occasion, yeah.
Yeah. Is it rare to find big mistakes from the IRS?
From our client's perspective, they all think that there's a mistake in there somewhere. When we go through and pull the figures, sometimes there is one. Sometimes it just turns out that it's the penalties and the interest that accrue pretty rapidly that leads to the impression that there's a mistake somewhere.
If you want straight information here, this is what I love. A local company, they have a national reputation. They handle things all over the country. You might have a friend in another state. They can still call 2020 Tax Resolution, 1-800-880-7318 is their number when they're not here. You saw the information at the bottom, along with the website, which is 2020taxresolution.com, 2020taxresolution.com, or 800-880-7318. Write that down for later, 800-880-7318, or direct people to martino.tv. Now,